What's up, guys? This is Yotto R, and today I'm here with Maria. And Maria wants to share a story with you guys, and she wants to tell you guys how her childhood used to be, and where she come from, how she grew up in different places, and how that affect her person who she is today, and her life. And she actually wants to make that into a book. And right now, all she wants to do is to make it into a video, so you guys can actually try to really listen the way she's explaining whatever she's saying. And yeah, maybe just like something small, like a nice message and everything.
Oh yeah, hi, I'm Maureen, and grew up in Canada, born in New Brunswick, grew up here, still here, will never leave Canada.
Yeah.
Well, I might one day, I hope to just go around and visit anyway. And yeah, I was thinking of writing a book. I've been thinking of writing a book since I was about 15. I wrote a bunch of stuff, but things get lost from 15 to 60, so anyways,
yeah. Okay. Okay, guys, stay tuned for more.
Okay. Hi, I'm Maureen. I was just talking about my life and where I came from and what kind of things really influenced me while I was growing up. So I talked a little bit about where I came from, which is East Canada, New Brunswick, East Coast, called the Maritimes. And so my family's from there, meaning my dad's family. They're French, they were French, still are. And my mom's family, who's mostly, well, I guess they're all gone except for her great-grandchildren. And there was a house built in New Brunswick in 1920, and that's the house that my mom grew up with. And my mom grew up in that house where she had her first couple of years. And then I guess after all her troubles and her years gone by, she started, I'm trying to figure out how she met my dad, because they didn't really live in the same town, but they didn't actually live far away from each other, so they must have met at some kind of a dance or some outing or something. My dad's family were country people. They really lived in the country. There was no, they didn't have electricity, and I'm sure they didn't even have the regular washrooms. But nobody had washrooms in those days. Everybody had outhouses, and so I know my mom had an outhouse because she's referred to it a couple of times, hiding people in the outhouse. I think her sister got drunk one time. She had to hide her in the outhouse so that she would really get it. She'd be more trouble to be drunk in the outhouse than anyway. So yeah. So I was thinking maybe that they met at a social event. They're probably teenage sweethearts, because I know my mom got pregnant very young. They were pregnant very young. I was 21 when she was born. No, she was 21 when I was born. So, and then a year and a half earlier than that, 21, say 20 or 19, she would have had my sister. And then she would have had my brother in 1956. So that would be her first child. So she was pretty young when she was born in 38. 38. Yeah, she'd only be 18. So, yeah, they started pretty young. My dad being 4 years older than her, he was a real social butterfly, and that family was very musically inclined. My dad's family, they all had guitars. They had to know something, how to play something, the spoons, anything. Spoons are big tablespoons, and you get them together and you get going. And then the aunts would sing, and they were very musical, religious musical people. So that's what you find there in the French in Canada, Eastern Canada. And of course you find the very religious Irish as well, and and the Scottish. So the Irish were my family, my mom's side of the family. And so my mom was before my mom, my grandmother. Speaking of that house, that was her house of residence as she grew up. So in 1920, I'm thinking, my grandparents, like my great-grandparents were born in the 1800s. I looked it up one time when I went to New Brunswick, and I went to the cemetery, and I saw 1857 or something from my grandmother's grandparents. So they were here. They were here a long time. Apparently, my mother's father was a Baptist. He was born in 1938, and the war broke out in. Well, it was already started for a while, but they didn't start going over till about 41 or 42, something like that. So, anyway. He was the engineer, and my mother was very proud of that her dad was an engineer in the British, no, not the British, she used to bring supplies to the British, ammunition and stuff, so they got blown up quite a bit. He worked in the boiler room, and she always loved stories of captain and ships, and we still have sometimes the ships that come down there. They can still have a ship in the water in the river there, the Miramichi River. So it's a long history. That spot there, it used to be called Newcastle, where my mom's, her dad, who was the engineer, and her mother. My grandmother, my mom's mom, she was young. She was the youngest of the family of 5. And speaking of that house, they grew up there, a family of 5. Even before my mom was born, I'm talking about my grandmother now. She was the youngest of 5. There was 2 girls. They would be my mother's aunts, right? So there was 2 girls. They went off to the army and they became nurses. And my Uncle Manzer, I found a postcard, him to his mother. That would be my mother's Uncle Manzer, Michael Manzer, whatever. He had, when I went down to check out the house, in the basement, he had his army bag from being over there in the fort he was in England in 1942. They found him in England. I guess he went missing in action. But, so yeah, he would have been around the same age as my, well, maybe not exactly, but I was thinking he would have been like a couple of years older than my grandmother. I don't know. Anyways, we're going over that, right? I know there was 5 kids there. I know one little boy died at the top of the stairs. The tops of the stairs still being the very same top of the stairs. And sometimes the light flickers off and on. That's how I know he's still there. Playing games. So he was only 11. He died of rheumatic fever. He used to be able to die of that in those days because, people didn't really, we don't have the medicine we have today. So anyway, and then my mother had 2 older sisters that went away to the army to be nurses, and then my grandmother was the youngest one who didn't go anywhere because she was too young, so she just had this child to raise, which would have been my mom. And so anyways, as far as I know, that's where I started out. And so we'll just go on from there from a little bit because I don't remember a whole lot, obviously. I only know what I'm told. So apparently it wasn't really a good situation there with my mother was different from the big French family that she married into. They were both the same Catholic, but I think my dad's family, the French family, was really, they were strict Catholic. So they didn't just go to church. They were there to tell you if you were being anything. Like my favorite saying, you know, that is so unchristian. I just love to tell people, you know, when they're acting up. I was sitting down in the park there one time. It was Sunday afternoon, and all the old folks were coming out of the park, and I went there with this dog. I don't know why the dog was so offensive. I think because she had to go to the washroom. So anyways, I can't even remember whose dog it was. Maybe the neighbors or something. She had a dog in the back. So this lady's there, and she's saying, you know, what's it? They allow animals in the park. Well, where else are the animals going to go? So, you know, she was kind of putting down the animal, and I thought because it was Sunday, luckily I had something to say. I said, you know, that is very unchristian of you. You should be ashamed. So anyways, as soon as she said, I'm sorry, the word stopped in my mouth. I couldn't say nothing more. You can't argue with sorry, so because it's so hard to say. So I just stopped, and then we made friends. And from then on, a couple of times I used that too. It's not really good to tell people they're being unchristian, because I mean, as far as I'm concerned, unchristian could be anything. But anyway, plus I'm not here to judge. So I was talking about the house, talking about the wharf at the bottom of the hill. Now, of course, it wasn't like that when my mom was growing up. There was nothing but the cliff at the end of the lane, and then you fell down to almost like the bluffs. You know, they were pretty steep. I mean, you could really hurt yourself sliding down there, which a lot of the kids did, and they went right off the cliff. So. My mom has a picture of her and her grandfather. Now, my mother was with her grandfather for a couple of years. I think till her grandmother died from, I don't know, cancer or something, stomach cancer. My mom said she tried to go up and bring her grandmother a blanket because she was so cold, but she got in trouble because, you know, kids not allowed to just go in the room where they're having their what they would call a wake in those days, you know, their celebration of life. Poor lady, she died, so then my mother was trying to give her a blanket because she was all cold there. So I learned to feel like that place was home. I learned to feel like East Canada was home. And even though they say nowhere is home, home is where you are, I always kind of considered that to be my place. And I always felt kind of proud that, you know, I could say, well, I'm from the East, you know. And so then from East, Maritime, my parents somehow got together, and there wasn't a whole lot about weddings and all that stuff. Like, it's all hush-hush. Nobody's allowed to talk about anything because I'm not really sure why. I mean, my dad was French. He was really quite dark. He had some sort of native or Mexican or something in him. So he wasn't allowed. And the neighbors were kind of putting their nose up. For some reason or other, my mother, she was kind of outcasted for some reason. I don't know if it was because she married a dark, it wasn't dark skin necessarily, but he wasn't as white as a ghost like she was. So anyways, they started having their children. They had my brother Mike. There was some argument with the French family, my dad's family, about who this child belonged to. Was he theirs or was he my mom's? So, and then the second child was my sister, Chatty Cathy. She must have been my dad's little angel. And then, so the third child, me, I don't think I fit in. Because they told me that I cried all the time. I was very easy to make sad. Like, you could just say something sad to me and I would start crying. I was very sensitive. So, being the third child, but my sister always loves to point out that, you know, they were in honeymoon stage when she and my older brother Mike were born. But by the time I got their third child, you know, they were already thinking. They're already having problems. They're already having some problems. And then there's talk about an army camp that my mom lived at with us little children. An army camp, but my dad, he drank a lot, so I don't know if he got a discharge or he just ran away. But anyhow, he didn't last through the army because I'm not sure why. I think it was his drinking possibly that got us kicked out. Once we were kicked off the army base, things got tough, right? And so my mom had 4 children, bang, 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 bang. She had my 2 older siblings, and then she had me and my brother. Within 4 years she had or 5 years, let's say, she had 4 children. So she really had her hands full, especially when my dad and her were fighting quite a bit. And it's pretty certain actually that they were already separating, and we children were put in some sort of foster home in New Brunswick, like when we were really young. And I think I remember that because I followed my sister to do everything, and she was told not to take me down the back creek because outside there was just like a little bit of water creek, and I was supposed to go there. She was supposed to take me there, but of course we went there, and of course I did fall in the water. So I was kind of like a Calamity Jane a little bit. Like if something wrong was going to happen to somebody, it would be me. We went down there to make mud pies. We just need a little tiny bit of water from the creek. So anyway, I remember getting in trouble. We had to stand in the back porch because we were all wet, full of mud. And she had my little brother in there, holding him, walking around because it was afternoon. I think he just woke up or something. He was in diapers, so he was only maybe 3. And she opened this little thing. She said, "Should we let those 2 in?" I don't know if he said yes or no. He probably did say yes. So anyways, yeah, I remember being in some sort of foster home. It must have been about 4 or 5 anyway. My mother, she didn't talk, well, she did. She always talked, my mom didn't have a wonderful relationship with her mother, so hopefully, I never wanted to be like my mom. I never wanted to be like, just have a whole bunch of kids and, but anyway. So then, somehow we got to them splitting up back and forth, and my father come to visit us one time, and we weren't allowed to see him. They spooked us and told us that, there was some bad man at the door, and we all had to hide behind the door. So anyways, and my mom said something like, her and her dad had to go over there with a shotgun to get Mike back. That was my oldest brother, because they were trying to claim him as theirs. Those French people that she hated so much. Yet she married 2 Frenchmen, and they both had the same name. So there goes hate and love. But anyhow, yeah. So trouble started even before we left New Brunswick. Came to Montreal. My dad was going to do a new start. I think my mom they were going to have a good start and start over. My dad was going to get a real job, because he could drive. So he was driving truck in Montreal. And I don't know. My sister said they got back together or something for a year. I remember coming on the train, the Canadian Nationals. It's still there, still going back and forth. I used to go to New Brunswick sometimes. But, so I remember one trip on the train with my sister. You used to be able to send your kids on the train like that, and adults would look out for you, right? If you were real small. Like if you were like 5 or 6 or 7. So we got to Montreal and my sister said she started school. She was 7 years old. So I was 6.5. That would be the second time I came to Montreal. I can't even remember the first time. It's just a blur. But apparently we had already been there one time before. And I only remember the second time that we came back. So second time we came back, I'm just kind of trying to skip ahead a little bit because I remember that we were playing in a field. We were living in a basement apartment. My dad was working at a truck driving job, and my mom was just trying to look after us kids. But you know, my mom had a little bit of a. She was a little bit. My mom. She had a mental. She had a depression. She had depression, so that's it, like an illness, right? She had a depression, which, and then she had more depression when my dad was fighting and drinking. So that really, you know, it's pretty hard to reason with somebody who's drinking. I've tried, it just doesn't work. But anyway, so we get here, we're here in Montreal, and I'm out there playing with my little brother across the street. Used to be able to do that. Used to have your little, you know, kids playing in the field across the street. My mom slept a lot, and plus she was pregnant. She was pregnant the whole time, so. So this is going on a little bit farther into it. I was about 6 years old. The second time I remember being in Montreal, living there. The French kids always trying to beat you up. And I guess it was like the Irish in the east and the North Ireland, yeah, Northern Ireland was. They were always fighting about religion. In Montreal, they were always fighting about language. So, yeah, the French neighbors around us were at war with us, and one lassoed me on the back stairs and tied up a rope like a lasso, like they were going to go catch a horse. And I remember seeing them coming, and the other two just flying. They're gone. And me, I just sat there and froze. Because I was kind of like a little introverted little kid. I wasn't really paying much attention to what was going on around me a lot, and I didn't see him coming. So he ran up the road with me that was just newly being gravelled, and so I got a nice piece of gravel right here in my head. And went to the hospital. I was a big girl. I don't know if maybe that was before. And then the second time, I really had a wingding of an accident. We were playing in the field. We were playing Batman, and me and my brother. He was the bad guy. He was little. He took a long time to catch me, but as soon as I turned around and he was almost catching me, I just got up and just freaking beat it across the street. And I totally forgot about that car coming that I just looked at. And so he hit me like T-bone. And I went flying, and I had to spend the 1966, the first hospital strike in Montreal. 66, and then the next year was 67, the Expo. But I'll get onto that later. So yeah, my fame to claim, my first fame to claim, is getting hit by that car, and the guy got really scared and took off because my sister, well, I don't know why, but anyway, she didn't help when she was hitting him, saying that he had killed me. So yeah, it was a hit and run. It was in the paper. The hospitals were on strike. The nurses strike, the first one ever. So they had to take me to the hospital. They had to stitch me up, my head. Stitches in my head, I was gone like a mummy. And my dad showed up to pick me up the next day with my sister, and I think she might have had my little brother with me too. Yeah, he's still fat. He like feels bad to this day. Like, remember when? And as soon as you mention that, he starts getting all upset and everything. Like, it wasn't his fault. It wasn't his fault that I ran right in front of the car. But anyways, so from there, I think my mother pretty much lost it after that. She gave the baby to somebody. She had a baby in April, and I got hit like, I don't know. She gave the newborn to somebody, May or June, June maybe. She didn't know who she gave the baby to, and like she really lost it after I got hit with the car, and she was on her 5th child. It was, but anyhow, so life really changed for me. With my claim to fame, and everybody was, oh, Maureen. And I was really lucky, the only one in the family who ever got hit by a car. But yeah, my sister was going to school at the time in grade 1, but she wouldn't have been going to school because it was summertime, so I don't know where she was. Or maybe it wasn't quite school out yet, I don't know exactly. But not long after that, because I still have bandages all over me, I still have my bandages. We ended up being put in like a French convent, which is a place where the nuns live, like, like an oratory, not an oratory, but a big institution. And being in Montreal, it was French. Some of the nuns spoke English, but they wore their black, it was black. They were the black gowns and the white, those things so they don't look on the side, ever see anything. So, anyways, they were pretty good. I liked in that institution actually. The only thing I didn't like was we had to learn. They were trying to teach us how to write, obviously to learn to do something. Like they had a class from school, and my sister liked doing all that. She was pretty smart. She was smarty pants, but I wasn't too swift because I just got hit by a car, and I didn't want to learn French in the first place. So. But I knew there was a box of hats sitting outside, and that's all I could think of. The box of hats on recess. They used to send us out on recess. And the first stop you made, you ran to the door as fast as you could go, and you went to that box of hats, and all the girls were fighting over the hats. Some had some pom-poms, the long ones, or they were colorful. But I was very interested in hats, and that was first and foremost. Way before the French and learning anything, I just wanted to wear that hat. We would go out to recess. I even remember going to movies there. Like we would go to, it must have been close to downtown, the city downtown. It must have been like right mid-city, this, it wasn't an oratory, but it was a convent. I don't know how to explain convent, like, anyways. If you look for where nuns live in the 60s, you'll find convent. So, from the convent, I was about 7. My sister was always smarter than me. Well, not so much smarter than me, but she was always ahead, a year and a half ahead, like educationally. And she liked things. She liked things like language. Of course, I liked it too, but, I think my brain was a little scrambled. I couldn't really remember too many things. My memory went away for a while. And, but anyways, after that, my parents, I think, had broken up for probably the last time. That would be of any use to me anyway, or any use to us children. And I think we started going to... Got hit by a car, that's right. And then I think shortly after that we went into those, like I said, it was kind of like an orphanage, but it was like run by the nuns. And the second one, the one that we went to straight after I was hit, this summer I was turning 7 years old. I think we spent half a year going in that convent learning, and we spent the other half possibly in foster care. I'm not sure if I know we had Christmas there because the nuns brought us a Christmas present. And at the end of each bed, we had all these little beds in a dormitory. And I was always with my sister. And we used to sing, and I remember missing my parents there sometimes. We used to sing songs that my dad would sing when he was out with, my dad was, he could play guitar, he could play the mouth organ. They're all very musically inclined, even their children, which came, years later. But, so that's where I learned I like to sing and all that stuff. So, now where am I? I'm 7, living in the orphanage here in Montreal. I'm actually in Toronto now. But yeah, then we were in Montreal, and she brought us up the hill to Dorchester and St. Catherine Street, which is downtown Montreal. And she had she had baby, my youngest brother, the 5th one. She had me and my little brother Stevie, so it's 3. She had 4 children with us, her. She had my sister. I don't really remember what happened to my brother Mike, if he was still in New Brunswick with my dad's family or what he was doing, but anyway, she took us up the hill to the Children's Aid Society and pretty much just left us there. We talked about that years ago. That was kind of like, I saw that a lot of times happen. I mean, I remember that happening a lot of times. My mom just leaving us there because, we had nowhere to go or something. She said we were locked out of the apartment. That could be true because I remember the landlord was giving us a hard time. We didn't have the rent. My mom went out and left us a couple of times, tried to talk to him or try to do something about getting money for food or trying. But anyway, so she was left on her own with all of us children. It was too much. She had no money, no food. And she took us up there and she just came out of the room with her head, she was crying. I think she was holding her face, or she was really upset, and she just walked right by us. That's probably why she was really upset. But, so from there on, the man took us into the office, and he started explaining that, my sister and I were going to go in this place, and it was going to be nice, and it was a foster home, and with nice people, and they already had 2 children of their own, and blah, blah, blah. So that's where we ended up. That was my first foster home in Montreal. And so that pretty much brings me to about 8 years old. I stayed there. I was 8 years old by that time. I was misplaced for 1 year between the convent where we were learning a little bit of French to living in foster homes. I think that's how we sort of ended up in those places. And so I basically just wanted to talk. I was very influenced by religion, obviously. Religion was the first thing, it's the first thing that you learn. You learn, what's bad to do. You're not supposed to tell lies, and you're not supposed to steal things. Like even little kids can learn that kind of stuff, right? And so very religious, but they were super religious. The Catholic in Montreal was unbelievably, like, you were not allowed to show, your leg, or You weren't allowed to dress like these kids dress, and very prudish, very, you know. So they were very strict. You weren't allowed to have boyfriends or anything like that until, I don't know, practically married. And then you could marry your boyfriend. So, yeah, so I think I'll just break off here because you can't really say a whole lot about my upbringing except that the claim to fame that I always had, that I was luckier than everybody else, was I could hurt myself just on doing nothing. So, and once I got hit by that car, I was like a celebrity. Especially because it was in the paper, it was a hit and run. And my mother told my sister, don't let her get out of bed, because the hospitals were on strike and I had to stay home with my head all bandaged up. Do not take her out of bed, don't let her go anywhere, I'll be right back. So as soon as my mother was gone out the door, we had the old milk bottles that we could get 5 cents for, so my sister got them all ready and we took them up to the store, me and my pajamas and my bandages, and probably bare feet. And her took me to the store, and they parted like the Red Sea. They just parted, and then they started giving me money, and there was some candy involved. So we went back with all the candy. My sister she wanted to, I don't know, somehow we didn't get away with it. My mother found out, and she was really mad that I had gotten out of bed. But I remember that, it was really good, because they thought I was dead. Some of them thought I was dead. I mean, who hits a little kid? I wasn't even 7, and, you know. So I want to leave it up there, and then being in the orphanage. So as far as I know, till I was about 7 or 8, till I was about 7, I would say, I was living in New Brunswick and then coming final time to Montreal, and basically staying there for Montreal. Gee, I must have lived in Montreal till I ran away and I was 15. So let's go from, say, 8 to 15. How many years is that? About 9? Yeah. So next time I'll talk about the next years and, you know, more growing up years, more crucial years. And